All right, today I'd like to welcome Matt to the podcast here. Matt has a military background, and we're going to be talking about Hearts of Iron 4, guns, gaming, and everything else. Say hello, Matt.
Hey everyone, it's my first podcast. Hope we don't screw it up too bad, or hope I don't. Sure, ESG's doing good. I've seen him do a few of these.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to screw it up. It's just whatever it is, it is.
I'm good with that. We can shoot from the hip.
Sounds good. So tell us about your military background.
So I initially enlisted in the U.S. Army in 2005, straight out of high school. I grew up in the D.C. area, and I'd been looking into getting into the special operations world in some way, shape, or form, between the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, Green Berets, and then I looked a little bit into like the Air Force stuff they got going there too, combat controllers and whatnot. And I decided on the Army just because they had more options really out of all the branches. Plus they had contracts that could get you straight onto track for what you wanted. So it was really between the Rangers and the SEALs for what interested me the most. But for the SEALs, there was no straight contract to go straight to BUDS and go to their selection. You'd have to be in a regular Navy job and like serve on a ship or whatnot for a year or two. And that was a big thing. So I signed an infantry contract with the Army with option 40, which is airborne and Ranger. I went down to Fort Benning from the DC area, and I've been down in this area the whole time. So I went to Fort Benning for infantry school, June of 2005, completed infantry school, and then went straight to airborne school, which is on Fort Benning as well. And then after the 3 weeks of airborne school, I went to, it's called RASP now, Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, but back when I did it, it was called RIP, the Ranger Indoctrination Program. Went through that, made it through it. We started out with RIP, we started out with about 120 guys fresh out of basic training and airborne school, so everyone's in pretty good shape. And then I think my graduating class was about 27 out of the original 120 or so. So after completing RIP, I was assigned to the 3rd Ranger Battalion, still in Fort Benning, and from there I was in Charlie Company initially, 3rd Platoon, and then I served in pretty much every role from rifleman to automatic rifleman up through team leaders and squad leader level roles at 3rd Battalion. Did 5 combat deployments with them. Went to Iraq 3 times and then Afghanistan twice. And then I kind of checked off a lot of the bucket list things I set off for when I joined the military, getting into the Rangers. Military school-wise, obviously I did airborne school, infantry school, did RIP, and then I did Ranger school, sniper school, RSLIC, which is a recon school. I did the 75th Ranger Regiment's Master Breacher course, so we get trained up on all sorts of explosive entries and door charges, wall charges, as well as other just breaching techniques with different breaching tools. I even went to a racing school while I was doing some recon stuff with the Ranger Regiment, where I went to Bill Scott Racing in West Virginia and did some like on-track racing and then also rally-style racing because they wanted us to be able to E&E if we ever needed to, if we were doing any low-vis operations and got busted. Did all sorts of stuff there. Then I got married and started having kids and kind of wanted to calm down a bit. So I ended up getting off active duty in a couple years in the Army Reserve at a unit that was on Fort Benning. It was a drill sergeant unit. I was kind of just doing that to keep my TRICARE going, the health insurance. And then kind of missed the infantry side of the house. And I looked more into the National Guard and realized they had more infantry opportunities. So in 2014, I swapped over from the Reserve to the National Guard, where I was in a LRS unit, which is a long-range reconnaissance unit. And then for my civilian job, I was doing government contracts recruiting at the time, my full-time job I was doing. And there was a recruiting opportunity for full-time National Guard that came around for the city I lived in. And so I applied and then got picked for it. And I spent the last 7 years recruiting for the Alabama Army National Guard, and just a few months ago I switched over from recruiting to retention. Now I'm still full-time, but I'm not looking for new people to join. I'm extending the ones that are in contracts going. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, sounds like a natural career transition, and you had an awesome and a long career, which is excellent. Thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm at the tail end of it. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's awesome. So when you retire, you get a percentage of your wage. Is that how it works? And then full medical benefits?
Yeah, so I'm still under the grandfathered system. When I enlisted, I locked in with 50% of whatever my base pay is the rest of my life, and then my spouse can get it too. So even if I died young or whatever, as long as she lives too. And then health insurance is covered through the. You pay into it, but it's definitely a good setup to get my finances where I need them to actually be able to retire and sit around. Now, I'll be about 42 when I'm planning at the end of this contract I'm in, which I don't really want to retire, not do anything. So I'll be looking to get another career going to get me probably to my early 60s for when I actually want to stop working altogether.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm already retired. I did the early retirement thing. So you're going to plan to retire from the military at 42 and then transition?
Yeah, so I'm looking into a few different things. One thing that's piqued my interest has been the JROTCs that are at high schools, because I have a bachelor's degree in history, the minor in Homeland Security. I did the history just because I'm a bit of a history nerd, and I focused most of my classes on military history, but I figured I'd either look into maybe teaching history in school or the JROTC. The JROTC, whatever the teachers make at whatever school you're teaching at, but if it's less than you get made from your military retired pay, then they'll bump you up to whatever you made full-time in the military on top of the retirement you got, because you have to be retired to be an instructor for it. And then I could do that for 10 years and retire with the teacher pension too. So that's one thing that's on the radar. I've looked into a bit of government careers. Most of those I'll need age waivers for, so I don't know. I'll have to kind of play that by ear. They have it set up so you don't really get an opportunity to retire from active duty and go into the wage grade GS position. But I don't know. I'll play it by ear as I get closer and go with whatever route makes the most sense for me.
Well, I'm jealous. Like, I wanted to study history and become a history teacher, but then I was told that, that wasn't going to be a money-making career. So I went on a different route. If I had gone and been a history teacher, I'd probably still be doing that easily. I admire teachers, and they also get 3 months off every year, so that would be nice. I think that it's a pace at which that's more sustainable than the usual American job, which is like, yeah, you're gonna get 2 weeks off every year starting, unless you work for us for like 5 years, then we'll step you up, and then 10 years, and yeah, that's a long road.
For sure. They don't make much, but I'd say whatever route you went, man, if you're retired already, then I'd say you chose wisely.
So it's incredibly interesting. Like, I got deep into this whole early retirement thing. And one thing that was intriguing to me was that, I don't know if you've ever listened to Dave Ramsey. He's studied millionaires, and he's done all these studies. Who's the millionaire? Who's not the millionaire? It turns out that teachers, they're per capita, there are more teachers that are millionaires in the United States. I think it was like 5th or 6th in rank by occupation. It was pretty insane. And then he attributes that to the fact that teachers make lesson plans and have to budget because they're off 3 months every year, and they have to be careful about their money, and they have to save. So therefore they're thinking about it all the time. And that's what his hypothesis was. But some of the other top careers were like engineers, math guys that sit there and they sit there and they plan everything out. They're planners. And so I guess he put the teachers in with the engineers as being like planners. You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't have guessed teachers would be that high up on the chart for millionaires, but I mean, it makes sense the way you put it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you're talking about per capita, so you're talking about the teachers that are over 55, that have had pretty long careers, I'm assuming. Yeah. Well, let's get back to the Army stuff. You said something interesting. So you were a rifleman, then a automatic rifleman. Can you describe the difference between those two roles?
Yeah, so automatic rifleman is just a fancy term for like saw gunner, squad automatic weapon. In the Ranger Battalion, we had the Mark 46 back when I was the automatic rifleman, which is just the special ops version of the M249 saw. A little bit shorter. It's got a shorter barrel, and ours had M4 styled stocks on them back when most of the saws in the early to mid 2000s were fixed stocks. So I mean that's the main difference. Because as a rifleman, I had an M4A1, which could fire on full auto too if you wanted to. Being a belt-fed machine gun, it weighs a lot more, and it has that bipod. So if you're shooting full auto, best to do it from a belt-fed machine gun setup like that, or not just belt-fed, but from an actual squad automatic blazing on full auto on an M4. Just that weight makes it a lot more controlled versus an assault rifle shooting on full auto.
What was your typical loadout? Did you have an ACOG scope on it or red dot?
We used a few different things over the years. When I first got to the Ranger Battalion, I had Aimpoint Comp M's. So if you're Googling it, it'd be the Comp M2 would be the original one that we had back then initially. That or an ACOG. So on my Mark 46, I'd usually just put a red dot on it. Some guys ran ACOGs on them, but with even shooting off a bipod, you see there's a lot more visual recoil when you're shooting magnified with like a 4-power ACOG, which I mean it's great for longer range engagements. You can do short bursts and really see what you're doing, but anything closer in, the ACOG is just kind of a pain. Now there were doctor sights and stuff that you could, little mini red dots that we put on the back. Some of the ACOGs, the older ACOGs we had back initially had where you see on that picture right there, you have the red, and that's just it draws in sunlight to brighten up the reticle. The older ones just had a front sight post and a backup rear sight. Didn't have that light emitter. So on those older ones, you could get a red dot that would replace the rear sight, and you could shoot with no magnification using it. But yeah, I preferred the Comp M on the saw back in the day, and then sometimes like over the years I had started getting shorter 10.5-inch upper receivers for the M4s. So I'd keep, by that point the Stop Mod 2 kit came out and we replaced the Comp M's with EOTechs. So I'd put an EOTech on my shorty upper receiver, and then I'd have an ACOG or an Elkin 1-4 power on my 14.5-inch upper receiver that I'd have on my M4. So throughout the years, as different government contracts came and went for equipment, we'd get newer optics and adjust off of your duty position and just what your main role for whatever gun you're using at the time.
What was your favorite all-purpose sight?
I'd say the EOTech. Like right now, I got a couple of them on my ARs, my personal ARs at the house. Because on that picture right there, you see the 65 MOA circle with the 1 MOA dot in the middle. That's just really useful because when you're in close quarters clearing rooms and stuff, if you have that center dot, say just within 25 meters and you're in the room of whatever target you're engaging, that center dot's going to be hitting 2 to 3 inches high, depending, because the height over bore optic is the distance difference between the optic and the barrel. As you get about 25 meters away, that center dot's going to be point of aim, point of impact, but anything closer in, because of that height difference, the rounds will be hitting low. But on the EOTech sight, that bottom hash on the bigger circle, that's pretty much point of aim, point of impact for anything close quarters. So it just makes it really dummy proof, if you will. So you don't have to be guessing your holds inside confined areas. So that's the main reason I like the EOTech over other red dots for sure. And then, I mean, you can get magnifiers to go behind the EOTech as well. So I think the most common one's a 3-power magnifier made by EOTech as well. And you can have it flipped to the side. So if you don't want any magnification, it's out of the way. And if you taking some extended distance shots, you pop the magnifier back on, and it's kind of the best of both worlds. There's newer LVPOs and stuff like that out nowadays that I've seen the Ranger Regiment using, but that was after my time there. I've been eyeballing picking one of them up for my own personal rifles, but they're kind of expensive, and I don't really need it for any of the engagement areas or distances that I have if I'm shooting around my property here. I've got a little range set up, but anything I can engage on my property distance-wise, I can hit without magnification. Found the need to buy one yet. It's more of a want. So,
man, you're giving me a lot of tips for Tarkov here, because Tarkov actually has height over bore, and then I was gonna tell you, I was just thinking, like, I'm just gonna run an EOTech every Tarkov raid, because, like, why not? And then if we're on woods, you put on, like you said, you put on the other reticle behind it. Yeah, the magnifier. And yeah, the height over bore. That's one thing Tarkov draws me to it. One of my big hobbies is weapons in general. It's like
rifles. I've built rifles here at the house, and then I dabble in tinkering with things, building rifles and pistols. And Tarkov gives you a level of customization that's not found in many games, as well as realism too, like the height over bore. Most games, if your red dot or whatever optic you're aiming at is on it, you're going to be hitting it, you know. So, but Tarkov, it's funny because it has the height over bore figured into it. So if you built a really stupid looking rifle with a bunch of risers and stuff, that height over bore raises. So it's really dependent on the setup you have. It's not just a blanket, hey, you're going to shoot 2 inches high. Because there's little risers you can get in Tarkov, and you could really stack a few of them if you wanted to see the difference in height over bore and how the game adjusts for your actual rifle's setup. So it's definitely one of the cooler things about that game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the level of, you know, specific things that they did to make it realistic are insane. So if you guys don't know about it, Escape from Tarkov is I would call it a looter shooter. So you go into an area and then they usually throw in like, depending on the size of the map, like 6 to 12 other they call them PMCs, player military combatants. Maybe I got that wrong.
I think private military contractors.
Private military contract. I was way off. But yes, he is. Matt's correct. Private military contractors, and you're kind of role playing as well. But Matt's absolutely right. The level of like modding that you can do, and you can find mods in raid, and there's stashes and things, and there's a different class that you could play as a scav, and they're just kind of like lowballing it, scavengers, you know, and you're just given a set kit that's randomized, and you could still pick up stuff and then use it outside of the raids to modify all your equipment. But the game, me and Matt have been playing it together. The game is 10 out of 10. Like, don't play Call of Duty anymore. It's like a waste of your time. It's just it makes Call of Duty look like purely an arcade game, nothing more.
Yeah, for sure. And I can tell you, having been shot at and stuff in real life, not many games can get my adrenaline going like Tarkov can for whatever reason it is. I think it's a combination really of the fact that when you die, you lose everything you brought in with you that you paid for. Combined with, I don't know, just I usually play with my headset on full blast. So the gunshots, they're pretty realistic. And on max volume, I call it the butthole pucker factor. Like when I'm getting shot at in real life, and in Tarkov, I'll get it too. Like, ooh, that was close. You know, and not many games, Call of Duty, Battlefields, I haven't got that same pucker factor out of any of them for one reason or another. I don't know, but
oh yeah, for sure. And then have you ever hit a mine? Like this map has mines. It's literally like the loudest sound in a video game, and I'm sure it sounds exactly like a mine, but like I take my headset off, I'm like, my ears are ringing, and I'm like, you do not want to do that again. Like whatever you do, just because it's so damn loud and it hurts your ears, like do not run into a mine. And it surprises you so dang much. Like you're like rattled and your like heart's pumping out of your chest when you hit a mine. It's awful. So what I wanted to, so you already taught me something about the EOTech that is in-game usable. I will start using that bottom hash, and then the field of view on the EOTech is what I like as well.
Yeah,
but
it's a bit bigger than like an aim point, just having that bigger window. Doesn't look like much, especially, I mean, in real life shooting both eyes open, you have a bigger field of view over some of the competitors. There's other competitors there that might have even a bigger field of, but that's just, I have the most time between aim points and EOTechs, and I prefer the EOTech over the aim point, mainly for the reticle and the field of view differences you get there.
I must have been looking at the wrong thing. Is the aim point just the scope ring, or is it an actual?
Oh no! So if you go to Google, type in Aimpoint Comp M2.
That's what I did, and they keep on giving me just oh, maybe I typed in the mount. That's why Google told me to type it. Here we go.
Yeah, because there's a mount that attaches on the rails connecting to the actual red dot.
Oh, that was the one that you gave me. That was yeah, I like that. See, I got it right here. Anyway, it's kind of like an ad, but it's this picture right here.
And
yeah.
So if you look at that middle one in that right there, that one That's generally what the ones we had back in my day looked like.
But the riser, though.
Yeah. I have an aim point mini on one of my AKs, which is still a circular red dot. It's a bit more low profile. It's in Tarkov as well. Less bulky. It's definitely an improvement. There's nothing wrong. I mean, both of those optics, battle proven and be done wrong by either of them. Kind of just comes down to personal preference and budget if you're looking at personal, because you're definitely going to pay for either of them. There's cheaper red dots you can get that do the same general thing, but to a certain extent, you get what you pay for. If you're actually going around doing shooting competitions or in a combat scenario where that optic's not going to be sitting on a closet queen that never does anything, but getting banged around. The cheaper optics generally, they might shoot just as well, have just as good as zero, but you lose out on just that wear and tear causing issues.
And then let's talk about headsets. What headset do you like to run in Tarkov?
In Tarkov, truthfully, I just go with the cheapest one, usually that top one, the Russian, the GSSH-01. And I do that just purely from a budgetary standpoint in game. In real life, I've used the Swordens, the second one down, as well as the Peltors, the fifth one down. And then there's some newer Peltors. They're in the game too. There's Ops Corps ones that the Ranger Regiment's using nowadays, but it was after my time. The ones that connect straight to the side helmet mount. But personal use, I've only used the Swordens and then the Peltor Comtac 2s, which, I mean, those are great. In actual use of Peltors, they can hook up to your radio, so all your comms traffic. And some of them you can either have a single hookup, or if you have dual embedder radios or whatever radio you happen to be using that uses the same radio hookup, you can plug in one or two radios into the headset so you hear all the comms traffic over it, as well as getting the hearing protection out of it, blocking out the main crack that's going to make your ears ring, but still being able to hear everything else around you.
Yeah, I found that the M32s here are too loud. The Opsman, everything is too loud. I like the Comtac 2s. The thing I don't like about the cheapest ones is you can hear yourself super loud, and that
footsteps and
scares the heck out of me.
I have a pair. Scroll down, it's the Walkers. I have those just for here at the house, messing around. They're cheap. They're like $35, so you can get them on Amazon. And they do just fine. The active hearing protection, if you or any of you do any shooting or anything loud, I guess, really, if they're on like four-wheelers or anything else like that might be hazardous to hearing. Those are a good budget entry point into the hearing protection world. $35 or $40 I think is what I paid for them. And I bought them like 2 years ago, and they're still going strong. Yeah,
I looked at them. You're right. You just buy them off Amazon, and this is the one you put the battery in. Is that right? And then if there's a sound that's louder than a certain point, it blocks it out. Is that how it works?
So that works. It works just like so you turn them on, it'll amplify everything. The only downside, if you're looking, I mean, the price difference is huge because you can get those Walker razors for like $35, $40, but a pair of Peltors or like the Swordens, they're going to run you a few $100s. It's just I think the directional quality that you get out of the sounds. Like with the Walker razors, I could put them on in my house and I can hear movement pretty much from any room in the house, but that directional sound quality is that's what you're paying for in the price difference. You can hear exactly what direction a sound is coming from with like a pair of the Peltors, where you don't necessarily with the cheaper ones. And you'll see that, like, I've never used the Peltor tactical port headset, but you can see them on Amazon. They're not much more than the Razer, and that's still going to be a big difference between like that set as well as the Comtac 2s, the directional hearing quality. But they all block out the gunshots that are going to make your ears ring, and still give you the amplified hearing. The one thing that I never got to ask you is, could you explain the difference between you hear a snick or a crack? So in Tarkov, it's kind of like realistic sounds. So you can sit there and hear crack, 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 and like what is that compared to the snick is an impact next to you, right? Well, so you'll hear the round snap more if it's closer to you, or that crack or snap. That's the round actually breaking the sound barrier past you. As long as most rounds getting shot at you, you're going to be supersonic, unless you happen to be getting shot at by a guy using like subsonic ammo out of a suppressed rifle or pistol, like a Val or a VSS. Yeah, and Tarkov does a good job on that too, because all the subsonic ammo, which kind of sucks in Tarkov in terms of penetration So not many people use it, but the people that I've run into using it, you won't even hear it most of the time unless, like, if it's coming at you, you'll hear it, but the sound travels a lot less, and it doesn't have that same crack, the supersonic crack for any near misses. Most of the time, though, if people are running subsonic, I'm usually dead by the time the shots are going off because maybe they're taking their time landing headshots or whatnot. So
okay, so when we hear the crack, that's behind us, so that means the opposite direction is where the shooting's coming from. Is that accurate? Or maybe, well, it doesn't matter because it could go supersonic.
Yeah,
it could be going supersonic in front of you, so they could be a very far way away.
Yeah, and then so you'll hear that, and then you'll hear the muzzle report later. So you'd really just have to directionally find off of the actual gunshot sound, but that round's going to come by you before the gunshots, just because that round's traveling faster than the speed of sound. So you'll have that initial crack from the round ripping past you, and then you'll hear the report of the rifle.
Okay.
A certain amount of time, just depending on how far away the shot was.
Okay, that was something I wasn't prepared for with Tarkov, because so you get 2 points of a location. So where the bullet went subsonic, and then you'll hear the retort from the gun. So from those two sounds, you could probably line up where it's coming from, right?
Yeah. Yep, and then with a good headset on, you can really maneuver pretty well in Tarkov, based off just sound alone, really.
Dude, I'm glad I got to ask you about this. I thought there was always 2 people shooting, if that was the case. So now I'd be like, oh, there's someone behind us, and there's someone in front of us. And I'm like, no, the bullet went behind you. The person's in front of you, same person. Okay, well, now I'm getting the tutorial here. Because, I mean, stuff like that matters on a big map like Woods, but doesn't matter at all in Factory because everything's close quarters. Well, okay, let's talk about, so that was Tarkov. We got to play again sometime, by the way.
Yeah, I've been dabbling. I've taken a little while off of Tarkov, going back to Hearts of Iron. But Tarkov probably should be wiping again if they stick to the usual like 6-month or so wipe schedule here shortly. So a lot of times I'll play the beginning of a wipe and then just wait and see what changes they make. Kind of just waiting to see their final release. But it looks like for what they're working on, they've got some good changes coming, some more weapons, and I think the downside to Tarkov, I think, is the netcode that they've been running, and I've seen this a lot, like in close quarters combat. The delay in the netcode hamper your defensive abilities. Like if you're holding an angle in a hallway or a room because you know someone's coming, the netcode issues they've had the last year or so I've been playing can sometimes make it a pusher's advantage. So even though I'm sitting in a room covering a doorway that I know someone's going to be coming through, my computer talking to the server won't get the info that guy came across the doorway and shot until even a quarter second later. And by then, if they're on it, and a lot of times you're sprayed down and dead. But they've addressed that from what I've read. So I'm definitely looking forward to changes there. Performance. I don't have like a NASA computer. I think I have a 3070 graphics card and then an i9. I don't remember the exact specs on it, but my computer's about 1.5 years, going on 2 years old. But I paid about $2,000 for it, so it's not a bottom of the barrel computer. I've got 128 gigs of RAM, and some maps recently I've been getting about, usually on average, 80 or 90 frames. But they're getting everything optimized, I guess. So and one of the optimizations, I haven't played since the latest update. They should be hitting soon, or it should be more optimized. So I'm interested to see what frames I'm getting now. Just looking forward to that netcode, the netcode changes, as well as just more and more optimization. Not that 80 or 90 is bad, but with my PC, I hopefully can get consistently well over 100 with more optimization.
Well, you've got a better PC than I have. But just, but slightly, I've got a AMD, whatever it is, 7, AMD 7, 30, 60, 16 gigs of RAM. And for whatever reason, they say that the CPU for this game, the CPU and the RAM matter more than the graphics card. So I think that the streamers are saying that that's the bottleneck. So the graphics cards that they're selling us must have plateaued off. So the difference between a 3060 and 3070 must be minimal. Yeah. But the difference between an Intel i7 and 9 must be...
Which I've got an i9. Let me see what I have.
I mean, the streamers that I watch are running i9s and then... maybe 4060s or 3070s. They say it doesn't really matter. But I'm saving for a
So
PC.
I've got an i9 109 or 10,900 KF, 3.7 gigahertz. I mean, it's not a terrible one, but the more optimized, the better it'll be across the board. Because reading like the different forums on Tarkov, some of these people are playing with like 30 frames a second, which is terrible. And hopefully it'll bring it up for them across the board, get them at least in the 60s or 70s.
Well, unfortunately, I was playing offline and I noticed that I was dying before I saw the person. Like you said, the peaker's advantage, but it was so bad that it was a lag of 1 or 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Or at least a second.
It can be extended out that far, not just quarters of a second, depending on network connections and whatnot. So that's definitely, if they can get rid of that peaker's advantage, it'll definitely be a big improvement to cut back on the chads running around the maps, if you will, to use a gamer term. One thing I've enjoyed though with Tarkov is I don't know if we're supposed to say anything like this, but I've downloaded the single player Tarkov mods, where you have to buy the game to get it. You can play it puts AI PMCs as well as AI scavs on all the same maps. It's pretty enjoyable. I've used that to learn the maps over time as well. If anyone has interest in that, I don't know if we're want to put this on the stream or not, but it's I just googled SP Tarkov, and it's a great tool. It's not breaking any rules as far as I know. I've never gotten banned for it, and I've been messing around on it off and on for the last year and some change, and it's a good tool to learn the maps without feeling like you're kind of getting tossed to the wolves against people that have been playing this for 4 years. Yep, and that's the website right there. And there's a bunch of different mods that people you can like on mine. I have it set up for like that SPT realism mod right there. It changes all the ballistics up as well as the ammo values. So in vanilla Tarkov, I wish they'd make some of those changes into the regular game, because like let's just say any FMJ, even like cheaper 5.56 ammo, a lot of times in the online, the regular Tarkov, you'll have to shoot someone multiple times to get a 5.56 round to penetrate level 2 armor if it's the crap ammo, quote unquote, when that mod right there takes it to where pretty much any rifle round's going to penetrate pistol rated armor, like level 2 and below, no problem, like just like it would be if it was good ammo. There's all sorts of stuff from like survival mods. It's definitely a cool resource to look into if online Tarkov's not your cup of tea, but you enjoy the game itself. That's one thing that you can look into and kind of build your own game based on what you're interested in.
Yeah, and that's why the scavs sometimes are pretty hard to kill. It will take you 2 or 3 rounds to penetrate the armor, and then you have to kill them.
Yeah, and that realism mod right there, what I like, one big thing I like, helmets in real application don't generally stop anything more than a pistol round or like a fragment from a grenade or something. In standard Tarkov, you have a lot of the helmets will stop 1 or even 2 rifle rounds when that mod gets rid of all that. So if you get domed, you're pretty much done, unless it happens to be a pistol round that helmet's rated for.
The Bastion, yeah.
Yeah, the Bastion supposedly can take a rifle round. I still wouldn't want to be on the receiving end to test it, but there's some out there that can. But that mod eliminates the vast majority of them.
I mean, I typically, because of what you just said, I aim for the sternum, and then most of my kills are not headshots, they're neck. I don't know if that's intended, but there is a neck area on the body, and it seems people go down just the same as a headshot. So
yeah, and so they're going to change the hitboxes up too, which is another thing I'm looking forward to. Some of the mods on the single player have, but on Tarkov, this next update, I think they're going to start making it more armor hitboxes that just cover where the actual armor is. Because if you look at any given plate carrier, except for the heaviest of stuff, like your standard plate carriers that I had over the years would generally only cover about a 12-inch by 18-inch section of your chest to protect just your vital organs. So I mean, we've had guys get shot just above their armor and get through and through wounds. But in Tarkov, that currently the hitbox is bigger on the body armor than it should be. I mean, it's not terrible. I don't want anyone to take that wrong if they haven't heard or played Tarkov, but it's going to get more realistic with more advanced hitboxes to have only where the armor would be covered. So you could still be getting hit and wounded in like your upper torso if it happens to be outside of where that plate carrier is covered. So I think that'll be a cool change. I'm all for the realism changes across the board. Whenever they're getting implemented, I'm happy.
Oh yeah, that is the point of this game was to be the most realistic shooter, so it makes sense. Yeah, are you playing at 144 hertz on your monitor?
Yeah, actually, I was at 120 just because I didn't realize the cable I was using to connect my monitor to my graphics card wasn't rated for 144. So I got one a couple months ago that brought it up, and I'm playing on 1440, no 4K or anything crazy like that, but I got a widescreen monitor that plays at 1440. So I guess if I was really going to be a frames per second snob, I could go with the regular size monitor that can play at 1280 or the 1200, whatever the step down from 1440, but not 1080.
Oh, I didn't know.
Squeeze out a few more.
Oh, I thought it was 1440 then 1080. I guess there is one in between.
There's one in between. That one you can get a few more frames at that. But
so I made the mistake.
Once you go up, it's hard to see. It's hard to go back because it's a lot clearer when it comes to seeing movement far away. The added pixels really make a difference. So it'd be hard for me to go back after seeing better, you know?
Yeah, I think that the hertz is the big deal because when we were playing, I was playing at 60 hertz.
Yeah, and actually, prior to getting the monitor that I have right now, I think I might have been at 60 hertz before that, and it was a big step up getting even more than 60. I think I was at 100 maybe.
Well, that was like the real that's why I was seeing people so late, and the capture card that I have in my secondary computer is only rated for 60. And then I have a full screen like you do, like a widescreen, but I have everything. There's like a black edge around it because to stream, I can only stream at 1080p. So it's really small and at 60 hertz. It's just like, dude, I'm going to be a monster if I get 144 hertz and I'm able to stream at like a bigger resolution.
Yeah.
And not have glasses on while I'm streaming.
Yeah, especially if there's sunglasses. I think you played a few games with the sunglasses going. It made it hard to see in some cases.
It wasn't too bad. I could just make my screen brighter, but on woods, it's not bad. Let's get into your Hearts of Iron 4 history here. Like, what got you into Hearts of Iron 4? And then tell us a little bit about why you like this game.
Actually, I found Hearts of Iron probably around like 2010 or 11. It was Hearts of Iron 3 was the first one. I got into a little bit of modding with it. I was on the mod team that made World War II immersion mod. I don't know. Have you ever played Hearts of Iron 3 at all?
I have not.
So with Hearts of Iron 3, like in Hearts of Iron 4, if you go to like the division designer where it shows the different battalions inside of each. So like here, Hearts of Iron 4's big improvement in my mind, going back towards just like the military history nerd. In your actual line regiments, you got 3 battalions of each, right? Making up 9 infantry battalions in this standard German infantry division. Hearts of Iron 3 would only allow you to do up to 5, and you couldn't add more battalions into each. But the mod that I worked on back then was it got rid of the 5 brigade limit, and so we made it so every division from each country had the right composition. So like the Italians had they had the battalions comprising their infantry divisions because that's generally how their standard divisions were made up. The Germans would be set up like this. So three regiments of 3 battalions, and so on and so forth for all the main countries in the game. So we got into, there it is right there actually. So it started out as DWI, and then when I got on board, we started branching out more into, it started off as like a German flavored mod initially, and then I got on board, we started branching out into all the other major countries. So we'd have historical divisions. Most of the countries that were involved in World War II, I made, obviously biased towards the Rangers, I made it so the Ranger battalions were available, but they were actual just battalion size elements, so they weren't just like some God squad, if you will. Tried to make it historically accurate based off the actual MTOs, the military tables of organization for each unit, and adjusted their stats for that. So I got into Hearts of Iron 4 off of my time in Hoi 3, and been pleasantly surprised with how Hearts of Iron 4 has developed. Some of the stuff that I actually didn't switch to Hearts of Iron 4 initially, just because I felt like they got rid of kind of some of the history nerd stuff to make it more mainstream. Like when it comes to higher up army compositions, like in Hearts of Iron 4 right now, armies and army corps. Hearts of Iron 3 had, or not, so Hearts of Iron 3 had corps, army corps. There was like 4 upper levels that you could do. And that's one thing I wish they'd add the core level back. So like within each of those armies that you just made there, they'd really be divided up 3 more times. Like in that, with Rommel having 16 divisions there, that would really be comprised of probably like 3 or 4 Army Corps. But that's just me being a history nerd. So that was one of the, but initially when Hearts of Iron 4 came out, they had, I think it was just armies. They didn't even have the Army Corps. And so once they came out with the Army Corps and armies, the way it's set up now, I gave it a try, and it grew on me. I did a lot of achievement runs initially, and then I started dabbling. I haven't really gotten into making my own mod stuff for Hoi 4. I'll tweak some stuff in certain mods, just messing around with orders of battles for different divisions. I've been playing a lot of Black Ice. I'll look up and see how many battalions or port companies of whatever each division had, and if it's not what I'm seeing in the history books I have or using different online sources, I'll just go into the game code from that mod and modify it to make it more historically accurate. But Black Ice is probably my favorite mod for Hearts of Iron 4. It really takes the production level to a whole new level, if you will. Because like in Black Ice, you have to make rifles, submachine guns, machine guns, rather than just like infantry equipment in general. And then you also have support equipment like the first aid kits, and it's kind of a blanket term or blanket item for that. Breaks down artillery into light, medium, heavy artillery, as well as mountain artillery for like some of the lighter stuff. Either for like mountain divisions, or in that mod sometimes like the Chinese and Japanese like light artillery fit more into mountain artillery. It just takes it the level of historical nerd can go up a bit higher. Like a Panzer division in Black Ice will be comprised of the Panzer III as well as the Panzer IV, and then they'll swap roles, because initially the Panzer III had the anti-tank gun on it, when the Panzer IV is more of an infantry support tank. And then later in the war, they swapped roles, because Panzer III couldn't put a big 75 millimeter long barrel, but it could support the shorty. And so they swapped roles. It just goes into a super high level of detail. That's once you get your wits about you in terms of how much you need to produce of each to make sure you're where you need to be by the start of the war. It's an enjoyable mod. So if you guys haven't tried that, I'd give Black Ice a try. I don't have any stake in. I'm not on the mod team or anything like that. But it's the mod I've sunk most of my time in if I'm playing modded Hoi 4.
Yeah, and I think I want to do this, and then my Discord has been bugging me because everyone wants me to play a different mod, and I think Black Ice will be the next mod that I play, and I'll probably live stream it. So nice. It's going to be pretty. Look at that focus tree. I mean,
and they redid all the focus trees for every country that participated in the war. I think like South America, all those countries in South and Central America didn't really have the just generic focus tree that minors can have in vanilla Hoi 4. But when it comes to majors and even just minors that participated in the war, they all have their own custom focus trees. Definitely something to check out. I think Black Ice would be fun to play. I've never played it multiplayer, but it'd be fun to do like a historical game. You'd have to really have everyone bought off on it, but where everyone had, in my mind, I think it'd be cool to have everyone limited to the divisions that were actually fielded throughout different time frames. To do like a true historical World War II and just see how it goes with that mod going. I think that'd be awesome. Which the mod does a good job of that itself. I don't know if you've noticed, like late game in vanilla, it can just be a slog fest. Germany's got so many divisions, the US has so many divisions, Soviet Union's got tons of divisions, and a lot of times you just have to nuke your way to the victory points if you're playing late game, like 45 and beyond. Black Ice does a good job, because each division in Black Ice has a pretty historical amount of manpower tied to it. So like your standard German infantry division in Black Ice, I think is like 16 or 17,000 men strong. And it's the same across the board. It'd be historical numbers. So like UK in Black Ice fields probably about 40 or 50 full-size divisions. That's not counting like the coastal garrisons and whatnot. In vanilla, even the UK fields about 100 divisions by a late war game. If you're playing a long game that goes 45 or beyond, the added manpower, and maybe just the code that they put in for the AI to have them not build just an astronomical number of divisions, makes it more realistic and enjoyable to me. If you're playing a long game. Now, I mean, vanilla starts out pretty accurate because it has the field of divisions for the most part, but it's just the bloat that they get late in game there's nothing wrong with vanilla. Vanilla is probably the best multiplayer setup just because it is what it is. People have their own like tactics and stuff that'll vary from single player, and they know it in and out. But playing single player against late game AI, that slogfest wears me down over time.
So Blackout Ice will actually load for a multiplayer game?
there's people that play it. If I joined the Black Ice Discord, the multiplayer channel set up. I don't see him play on it very often, but it's multiplayer compatible for sure.
That's cool. Maybe after I learn it a bit, we'll have to play that sometime.
Yeah. I'd be down.
I don't know if you saw, but I just talked to the lead game developer. Any theories about what's coming, since you're a Black Ice guy, what's coming to Hearts of Iron 4? Because some of these mods, he didn't talk about this, but I'm sure that some of the mods give the game developers ideas. What are your thoughts?
I didn't catch your talk with him. When did you do it? Just recently?
Oh yeah, it just released yesterday.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't get a chance to see. I'll have to check it out. But I mean, you'll generally see that a lot of times with Hoi 4, really any game in general. And it really is a good idea. And I do enjoy the fact that the group of guys that are doing the updates on Hearts of Iron 4 from Paradox, they seem to be really receptive to their fans and implementing multiple quicker changes like in the last year or so than you've seen in the past. But yeah, I think there's no better crowd to really tap into for new ideas, because they can see how it's implemented in the mods, see how it affects like the meta gameplay and whatnot, and just see how whether it would kind of break the game or if it fits in nicely if implemented properly. So
do you think, like, I'm clicking around here, it is these weapon types are not upgradable, but you could still click on it to rename it, and then there's a box down below that's blank to where, you know, they did add in
a few of them,
all like this customizability, but
so with Black Ice, there's other mods that do too. With like Black Ice, if you were building K98s, you can add smoke grenades to the standard rifleman loadout, which would give you a little bit more breakthrough or different stats. You can they let you adjust the reliability. So like, let's say, maybe you're making more quality rifles. They're going to cost more IC, but they're not going to have the reliability issues that you start seeing in like rough terrain and whatnot. Black Ice has it so you can do the same with artillery. Pretty much any equipment you can make it better. Even uniforms. Black Ice has you make, if you're Germany, you got regular the Heer or the Wehrmacht uniforms as well as SS uniforms, and then you can adjust. You can add, I think, camouflage as an option, but then also just like quality, bring that reliability up. Yeah, that hopefully I'd like to see them implement that for sure in vanilla, because that's one way you could get the upper hand. You'll pay for it on the front end with like that artillery piece right there costing 3.5 IC. Let's say you wanted to put maybe a different an upgraded gun carriage on it to where it raises a stat on it, whether it's soft attack or whatever the case might be. It'll cost more on the front end, but it might give you the edge on a similarly comprised infantry division on the opposing side, because they didn't invest in it. You know, little things like that are always would be a good change in my opinion.
Yeah, like quality over quantity, particularly with the logistics system that they implemented with No Step Back.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of the railways, because I was playing Hoi 4 before they did the railway changes, where you just kind of do a broad frontal push. The last few months I've really focused on, like, when I'm attacking a place, I'll follow the railways to the next supply depot, which will kind of cripple the defenders that were using that supply depot, because they'll be undersupplied for a while, and it gives you better chances to get a pincer maneuver or just to get them encircled while they're moving slow and just not fighting at their full potential. And that was something that played a big factor in the success or failure on all the sides of World War II. That wasn't really... There was supply prior to the railroads, but the railroads took it up to the next level in a good way for me, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, me too. I told the dev that, you guys, it's a genius level thing that they added, and they've been tweaking it, and it makes supply in Hearts of Iron 4 work more like IRL. I'm sure it's not perfect.
And it has more logic to it. In the past, infrastructure up and hope for the best, really. You know, like, let's say on the case prior to the railroads coming up, if you had a successful Eastern Front as Germany, it was a pain in the butt when you pushed past like the Ural Mountains, because there was no infrastructure out there, and you just had to build up the infrastructure to the highest you could, and you end up turning the map into like level 10 infrastructure. And sometimes you still have supply issues, but here you can build a supply hub and build a really good railroad to it, and it makes it so you have more control over areas. If you're still having infrastructure problems or supply problems, infrastructure is not the one-all be-all fix. Sometimes that supply hub and just like a level 4 or even 5 railroad can get you what you need without having to dump months into infrastructure.
Yeah, the rails are a lot cheaper to build than a road, which makes sense IRL. And then you could just shift left click to upgrade bottlenecks, and it'll automatically put it into your construction queue, so it's fairly quick to get around the map like that as well. Yeah, I enjoyed those changes. We'll see what they have coming up. I'm not sure. The lead developer told me that I might be able to figure it out if I listen to the podcast. I've listened to the podcast now a couple times because I had to make chapters and things like that, and I couldn't figure it out. So I really couldn't say. The only thing that I would speculate is that he gave a hint that they might change the economic laws and how they work. I was encouraging him to give an option for multiplayer to balance trade by 1939, just an option, not to change the base game. But I don't think that they are in the business of giving like multiplayer options. I think that that's out of their reach, so I don't think that that's going to happen. Yeah. But me and a lot of people are speculating that they will add into these different equipment types different options to, say, make, like you said, camouflage, smoke grenades, etc.
One thing I'd really like to see, say you already got it implemented in the game with the tank designer. There's a mod out there that does infantry designer too, but one thing that's not all that well fleshed out is like the different compositions of your standard infantry loadout at the battalion level and below. Like for how many semi-automatic rifles are mixed in. I mean, you obviously can produce like rifle 3 or whatever that usually is semi-auto by the time you get to it later in the game. Or like, let's say I wanted to design an infantry platoon that had a little bit more submachine guns stacked in it, but the submachine guns should in theory reduce like your effective engagement distance because they're shooting pistol calibers and there's not good long range, but they're great for buildings, and it'd be good in urban. I wish they'd have that infantry designer that you can design different types of battalions to have different specialties. And I think they could do it with what's already in the game. Like if you just took the tank designer shell and then you could have like, hey, I want my standard platoon, or even just do it at the battalion level. This battalion should have 200 submachine guns in it. The rest would be bolt action rifles, like if you're doing your standard German battalion at the early war. And then as the war progresses, let's say you get the STG-44 later on, and you want to make that your main rifle, you could start doing squad or different battalions that would be specialized, or I don't know, maybe focus more on getting that new equipment. I think an infantry designer would add another good level of customizability as well as realism to the game. And there, I mean, you could go all sorts of different ways with it when it comes to like the number of NCOs versus officers versus lower enlisted in a battalion, which different countries had different compositions of that, and you could make it affect organization or all sorts of other things. So, I mean, the game's already built to be able to do such a thing. I think it'd be cool seeing that implemented.
Well, I think you're not the only one that thinks that would be cool, because I've been getting comments where they're talking about what we're talking about here. A lot of people have been commenting infantry designer. So I do think that if they implement that, they will use, like you said, like the tank air or ship designer. They'll just do it like that. And then I get the best, on my channel at least, the best, most articulate comments where there's several paragraphs long, specifying, like, some of my videos have almost been like a Reddit thread, which is great. Please keep doing it. And I try to leave people hearts so that they keep on throwing out ideas there. But one guy was talking about urban environments like you just talked. So if you did have small caliber, then that would be your urban environment, I don't know, battalion. So you just put in a battalion inside of your division.
Yeah, not just infantry, like a battalion designer would be cool. Because like when it comes to assault infantry or something like that, specialized battalions for that, as well as artillery though, because like Germany had certain amounts of different size artillery pieces in their standard artillery regiments, and versus France or the UK or the US. So just a battalion designer in general, where you could customize how many artillery pieces each artillery battalion has and of what type. If you have multiple, like in vanilla they just have the one for each level, but like in a mod like Black Ice where there's 4 different types of artillery pieces, you could say, hey, I want 12 of the 105 millimeter artillery pieces in this battalion and 3 of this or that caliber. It would add a good complexity but without it being over the top, and then you design it, and then based on how many battalions of each that you have as a country, I mean, it could still just adjust for the needs, because it'd all be calculated in your logistics tab or whatever that shows units that you're behind.
I think a much bigger logistics tab.
But so if it could still draw, like if you had, let's just use vanilla here. Let's say I added an extra artillery howitzer per battalion. So it would take however many artillery battalions I've got as a country spread throughout my divisions. The system could calculate for it because it's already doing it now, counting the individual battalions that are the only one that you can pick from. It would just have to adjust based on the value that you give it, adding that one additional one per. So I think the calculations are possible to be implemented with the current system, and I think it would just add a good layer or customizability. Because once again, you'll pay for it because it'll cost that IC difference on however many guns you're adding to each battalion over the course. But your artillery regiments or battalions will pack a lot more punch, so you'll get to reap your rewards for sinking the IC into it. But you also might run into shortages. I mean, it would be a good level of complexity.
So that is what you'd want. What do you think they're going to do?
I don't know. So I'm happy with whatever route they end up going, just because I've been playing Black Ice a lot. So I kind of do this already in Black Ice, because Black Ice you have light infantry, which doesn't have quite as good a defensive value as your standard infantry battalion, but they're better off in rough terrain, not as good as mountaineers, but better off in like swamps, hills, and in mountains than your regular line infantry, with a malice to defense and organization and some stuff. But then you also you got the regular line infantry battalions, and then you also have, in Black Ice, you have assault infantry battalions, which are equipped with submachine guns. So you could make a whole division in Black Ice like the Soviet submachine gun divisions that they had later in the war. But so what I do to implement that in my own Black Ice games right now, I'll add at least 1 battalion of assault infantry. Like if I'm playing as Germany, I'll add 1 battalion of assault infantry to every infantry division I've got, and so that makes me need to add the submachine gun. And then if I want to add more to get a higher value for the bonuses you get for like urban combat, I'll add 2 or even 3 battalions of assault infantry to the infantry division. I think Hearts of Iron 4 is in a good place right now. It's got a lot of room for modding, and I'll take whatever changes they give us. I won't complain either if they do any of like the customizations that we've been talking about.
So you're going to get it on the mod basically no matter what, so it doesn't, it's not as big of a worry
over here. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I like that line of thinking. The kind of last thing that I wanted to ask you, let's start off with let's transition out of Hearts of Iron 4, but maybe it does have to do with the military here. What's the most useful grenade in your opinion?
Depends on your situation. So the grenade I've used the most is going to be just we bang every room with the flashbang generally. So in my experiences during the GWAT, tossed many a flashbang. So I mean we used them the most, and then we used smoke grenades to mark like LZs and stuff, or for concealment purposes. In an urban combat situation, I think flashbangs are getting used the most, especially when you care about hearts and minds, if you will. Like in a conventional war, probably play a bigger role, but in the combat I found myself in, they didn't want us fragging every room we entered. So I'd say flashbangs for me would be the most important. And there's different types of flashbangs. We'd have single bangers that just go off one loud big time. And then you have double bang or 2 bangers, 3 bangers, up all the way up to 9 bangers, and they just sound the more flashbangs detonations you have, like on a 9 banger, the booms aren't as big, but it sounds like a gun shooting on full auto for like 9 rounds. So it just really helps get the guys in the room ducking down or just freaking out because they don't know if someone's just like blind firing into it or what the case is. And so we just chase them in about the 3rd or 4th bang on a 9 banger and just give you the upper hand.
So when you say bang, there's one flash, but then the noise. There's noise coming out of it.
So like a 9-banger would have a whole bunch of different holes. Would have 9 different holes along the edge of the grenade body with essentially firecrackers in them. Flashbangs don't really blind quite like they do in games. That's one thing Tarkov doesn't get right, because flashbangs will blind the crap out of you in Tarkov. It's more for just throwing off that defender off of his A game and giving you a potential upper hand if he's sitting there holding a corner on you, waiting for people to make entry into this room. But yeah, so like a 9-banger, you go bang, 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 9 times. And so that person that's not expecting it would just, what's happening? And hopefully not get you shot in the face when you go through that doorway.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I was watching some competitive Counter-Strike, and in that game too, it does blind you, but the flashbang, you have to be really good at placement of flashbangs, basically. The smoke grenades, it looks like it's pretty easy to place those, but those are important too. But in that particular game and in Tarkov, the flashbang is probably going to be king.
Now, I mean, in a conventional war, or just a war where you're doing a lot of maneuvers, smoke grenades will play a big role, especially if there's big open areas. Pushing through, and going back to Hearts of Iron, if you're fighting through a plains area where there's no terrain to use for cover or concealment as you're maneuvering on the defenders, the smoke will at least give you a break in the line of sight, so you can maneuver closer to your preferred engagement area. And you probably see a lot more smokes getting used, like in Ukraine, because Ukraine's like our first real glimpse at a modern conventional war that we've had since Vietnam, really. The Gulf War and the opening phases of Iraq could have been considered modern. Your first modern, equally equipped war would be what I labeled Ukraine as. But yeah, I think you'd get a lot more use of smoke on a consistent basis. I mean, we'd use it in training because we'd be training for conventional war too during my time in the Rangers. But when it came to our deployments, we were mostly going out for HVTs and raiding houses looking for certain guys. So we'd usually go out at night where smoke's not really going to do much different because we're already running with night vision and are using the darkness to our advantage to get to our targets. But yeah, smoke will play a role for sure as well.
I feel like the average U.S. citizen doesn't understand the difference between like what was happening in Afghanistan and Iraq compared to what's happening in Ukraine, because it is very much so Ukraine's a conventional war, whereas Iraq and Afghanistan was more surgical, right?
Yeah, like for sure from the special operations perspective, like we were essentially what people think of like as a SWAT team. We'd get briefed up on our target, we'd go hit his house at like midnight or 1 a.m, and it would just be, we'd set up a secure perimeter once we infilled, do usually an explosive breach to the house, and then we'd go stealth to that point and then hit them hard and fast. And the whole house would be secure within about a minute or so of us making entry. And we'd grab our guy and get out of there and then go do it again. Some nights we'd do it 5 times, but that's at least from the special operations perspective, that's what most of Iraq and Afghanistan was in terms of the combat that we...
Yeah, there's no like artillery barrage prepping the area, and then you're like going through trenches and like trying to get to a target and like popping smoke so that people know like, don't hit me out. This is where we are, because they're just open fields for days.
Yeah, or using different smoke for different signals, like say, hey, because we'd train for mind-wired obstacles and trenches and stuff like that still, just in case a conventional war kicked off. But like you'd mark different breach points into the like a trench with a certain color smoke grenade, or one smoke grenade means to shift and lift fire. For like support by fire position, machine guns covering an objective. But you see those uses not diminish, but they're more used in a conventional combat sense rather than urban ops, you know?
I think this SWAT team analogy is pretty good. I watch a lot of podcasts with veterans, and I never heard anyone describe it like that, but I think that sounds accurate based on my non-military knowledge of what those different wars were, the conflicts were.
Yeah, I mean, in Afghanistan, you'd get more extended, conventional-ish engagements. At the end of the day, we had technological superiority pretty much constantly. So a lot of those firefights up in the mountains, we'd be calling in CAS rather than humping our way up 500 feet to find the guys that are shooting us. You know, so.
Yeah, do you know about that guitarist from Soundgarden and Nirvana?
Yeah, he was actually a ranger when he first started out, and then he switched over to the Green Berets. Jason Eversman, I think, or
I believe
I
so.
think that's who it is.
He's great. He's well spoken, and the way he described it was, we got a CAS stack, and I was like, oh yeah. So I guess there's certain situations you could do this first, this second, this third.
Every mission we planned, we'd have different CAS on standby. I mean, we'd have it planned out based on their availability, whether it's a fuel limitation or whatnot. So as like an F-16 came off standby, we'd have them in a far orbit, and then whatever else, the next package that would come in as they came out for refueling, the next package, we generally always had CAS coverage, at least in our missions. We'd always plan it in. Because it's never any fun if you're out flapping in the middle of nowhere with no QRF or anyone within a reasonable response time to not have something overhead.
Were there situations where you had artillery?
Yeah, so I mean, there was generally always artillery in theater, but CAS was just a lot fast and effective on target, because we'd have our own JTACs that would be with us, and they'd be talking to the aircraft overhead, even when they're not getting engaged. They'd just be constantly communicating with each other, and like, let's say an A-10 came in for a gun run, and it was 50 meters west of where they wanted it. That JTAC would be able to quickly say, "Hey, you need to shift right 50," or whatever the adjustments might be, and they'd come and do another pass and hit where you want them.
50 meters.
Well, I was just using that as an example, you know.
Oh, so, I'm just surprised at the amount of specific accuracy. 50 meters, aren't they pretty high up? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, we'd be marking the targets with an IR laser most of the time. So and if it's nighttime, the pilots can see it. And there's daytime markings that we'd be able to use as well. But so I mean, with you can't use an IR adjustment with the artillery when you can with CAS overhead, so they can see, hey, I'm painting the target right now with this laser, and then the pilots can confirm it and then come make their run on it. You know. Have
you heard that? I heard this. Maybe it's not a theory, but the Warthog is based off the Junkers dive bombers from.
Like a Stuka.
Yes, because you know how they got it. We got all the Nazis after the war, right? It was Hans Rudel.
The Junkers was a robust platform, and I want to say, like, when it came to the landing gear, they made it one of the things they wanted out of it was something that wouldn't be prone to breaking, so they made fixed landing gear, at least on some of the initial models. I don't know if they get rid of it. The A-10 lives up to all the same robustness. That thing can take a beating. It could even lose an engine and still stay flying with just one of those going. Yeah,
you see the gull wings. Supposedly they got, I think Rudel was in South America, and it's like, hey, you're gonna spend the rest of the life in prison, or are you going to help us out here?
Pick your poison, man.
So yeah, I thought that was an interesting story, and he lost a leg and was still flying till the end of the war. It was a pretty crazy story. The one thing that I wanted to, before I let you go, I really wanted to get your perspective on the XM7, the new weapon system for the Army, I guess, or the Armed Forces of the United States. This is produced by SIG. It is they use a printing technique, a additive manufacturing, I think is what they call it, but it's basically 3D printed parts, specifically the receiver and the silencer. Have you seen this in action? And then the round is 300 blackout. What do you think about it?
I haven't seen it in action, but we should start seeing these pretty much across the board in all the infantry units, both active duty Army and the National Guard. I don't remember. I want to say it's supposed to completely phase out the M4 and the infantry units by towards the end of the 2020s, I think, if I remember right. But the 6.8, it's going to be a more stout round, which is good, because a lot of times 5.56, I mean, it'll put people down. But a larger round packing a bit more punch, like with the SCARs that we started using, or the SR-25 or the SAS when it comes to designated marksman rifles or sniper rifles, that 7.62 packs a lot more punch, and you won't have people cracked out or whatever kind of drugs they might be on or whatever the case might be that lets them run through a smaller round that goes through and through them. My biggest thing that when I saw this coming out, my biggest critique would be the magazine capacity. Now, hopefully they'll change this to a 30-rounder, but a 20-round mag, if this is going to completely replace the M4 in your standard infantry squads, you're losing 33% of your firepower per magazine. I mean, the rounds will pack more punch, but in a gunfight, it's not always down to timed, accurate shots. Sometimes it's keeping their head down and keeping them suppressed. And losing 1/3 of your ammo could play a pretty big role in the suppression potential for your standard infantry platoon. So, but I mean, a magazine size, adding a 10 more rounds to a magazine isn't a major change. I'm just surprised that they were okay with it right off the bat, just from that standpoint.
Matt, I didn't know if you knew about this, but I watch Forgotten Weapons, so I'm an expert. And they say that you could use whatever mags. It's
okay.
I don't know what they're going to issue you.
Initially, I was reading 20 rounders, but if they switch it from 20, then that's a good thing. That was my biggest what the heck moment when I saw that rifle coming into play. Because everything else I've seen about the rifle is fantastic. When it comes to reliability, that thing's supposed to be kind of on par with the AK when it comes to just sheer robustness and not stopping up. Which I mean, I've never had issues. If you take the time to clean an M4, I've never had stoppage issues. Which I mean, your standard infantry guy. That's your main piece of equipment right there. So they're generally all going to be taking care of them. But anytime you can improve reliability.
Well, I think that, I don't know, you could change the gas system based on your ammo. And they were saying, Ian was on Forgotten Weapons was saying that the U.S. military is concerned about body armor technology being improved. So they're getting ahead of that, and they're saying that this is more powerful than a 7.62 round. So your AK round, the size of the rounds are, I think they said it was comparable, but the actual energy and force that the round delivers is greater than the AK. So that'll be good.
Nice. No, I'm all for it. The M4's had a long life. I mean, if you trace it all the way back to the M16 days in Vietnam when that replaced the M14, that's a long service life for one weapon system. So we got our bang for our buck out of the AR platform, and it's served its purpose. But I think it's with the advancements that we've got nowadays, and just 20 years of combat, being able to build a rifle based on what we've seen, that's going to check all the boxes that we see fit. Letting the M4 ride off into the sunset and replacing it with something new. Yeah,
absolutely. I think this is going to add a lot of confidence to the infantrymen for sure. Particularly the suppression, every rifle is going to be suppressed.
And that plays a big role. I mean, it raises, you get a lot more potential to do what used to just be special operations type missions if you're rolling suppressors, trying to keep your noise down to a minimum. I mean, obviously nothing. A suppressor's not going to make it so people can't hear you taking a shot 100 meters away or anything, but you're not going to wake up the whole village within 5 miles shooting a suppressed rifle if you have to engage a target at nighttime, which that can play a big role in success or failure. Whole villages come into, in Afghanistan, you get in a gunfight, a lot of times it's not just normal combatants. Sometimes it'd be people grabbing rifles, seeing what the heck's going on, So having the ability to have a suppressor, even for conventional units, can play a role for the better in a lot of different scenarios. I think that's a good thing.
Well, thanks for giving me your thoughts on that. I thought it was a pretty exciting thing that the U.S. military was doing. And we'll end the podcast here, but thank you for joining me on this. And if there was anything that we didn't cover, fear not, you could always come back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm off every Monday now with my retention role. So if you ever want to do anything else like this, let me know. Or you want to get some Hoi 4 or Tarkov going, let me know. We'll link up.
Yeah, and if you guys that are listening want to hang out with me or Matt, join my Discord, and we'll try to answer any of your Hearts of Iron 4 questions over there. And yeah, we'll probably have Matt back after there's a new release, and we'll have another round of podcasts that are going on. You can find my podcasts on my YouTube page. It is under the podcast section, but under a playlist. YouTube recently opened up the podcast shelf. And like I said, thank you so much, Matt, for coming, and I'll see everyone on the next one.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.